the introduction. Welcome everyone to meet your legislators. I'm so delighted to see a good crowd here today. I'm Holly Monkman. I'm the Advocacy Director for the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. And I want to extend a great big thank you to the Louisville Senior Rec Center for opening up their space to us. And looking forward to this. So there's probably a few of you who may not be familiar with the League. We are a nonpartisan political organization run by volunteers like you and me. And while we never endorse candidates or political parties, we do have policy positions and take stances, sorry for that, on proposed legislation and ballot initiatives. The League isn't just for women, it's for everyone. And if you'd like to help us make democracy work or during election season, please talk with me or one of our many members that are here, or check out our website, lwvbc.org. A couple of housekeeping details.
We try this one. Yeah. How's it?
Hello?
Yeah.
Maybe I can get a little less of that pop every time I say a P. All right. That was annoying me. It couldn't have been good for you. So to let you know that the event is being recorded on Zoom. I'm hoping to put it on our YouTube channel for those of people that are interested in watching it at a later time. The bathrooms are located back through the door you came in the hallway on the right. We have 4 exits on the back wall. I do my flight attendant routine now. Exit here, exit over there, and one over there. It is a big facility. Who knows what could be happening elsewhere? If they trip the alarm, you know, the nearest exit may be behind you or maybe in front of you. So we've gathered here today to hear from and ask questions of our state senators and representatives. And the legislative session just recently opened this past week, and I'm grateful that so many of them could join us today. I asked for a few rules for all of us. Please listen and be respectful of each other. Unfortunately, we do not have enough microphones to pass around the audience. That's why we've been handing out, making index cards available so you can submit your questions in writing. And Stacy and Leslie that you may have already met, if you need a card, or have a question to turn into them, please just raise your hand and they'll come visit you. Let's see, we have a lot of questions already. I will do my best to get through as many as we can. I can guarantee you now we won't get to everything. It's quite a list. I do see some common themes, so some I will try to combine or weed out duplicates. But if we don't get to your question, obviously you can Google your rep or senator, or you can go to our website under the voting menu, elected officials. We keep the contact information for all your elected officials up to date there. So you can always send them an email or give them a call if you look at the information there. And yeah, I should have said this while you were all writing questions. If you have a question for a specific senator or rep on a question you haven't written yet, please make a note and we'll do that. Otherwise, I'll just open it up for general response. So to introduce today, we have Representative Junie Joseph from House District 10, Representative Kyle Brown, Representative Leslie Smith, and then Senators Janice Marchman and Judy Amabile joining us today. Unfortunately, as you may have noticed on the way in or on our Facebook page, Karen McCormick had planned to be here, but she's not feeling well. So she's disappointed to not make it. And Representative Wook and Senator Hawks-Lewis had previously said they had other engagements and couldn't make today. So we'll miss their participation. But all right, and I want to open it up first with Representative Joseph for what are your priorities for this session that has just gotten underway? And then we'll go on down the line. You know, please take 3 to 5 minutes to let us know what you intend to focus on this session.
I'm gonna. It's up to you. I mean, if you're fine sitting, that's fine. And then you just pass this mic between you and I'll try to work with it.
Thank you. I'll just stand for this one since I'm introducing myself and then I'll take the answer sitting down. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Junie Joseph, State Rep out of Boulder. This Well, I'll start with my committees. I sit on finance, environment, and appropriations. Finance is extremely important to me, as you all know. Tell me tell me your budget and I'll tell you what you prioritize. So again, to me, that's very important to me. I just got a new role as well as caucus co-chair this session. I'm really excited about, doing that role as well, wrangling my colleagues to coffees, lunches, and also different trainings that's happening around the Capitol. So I'm very grateful for that role. As far as my priorities, I work on five promises that I make to the people of Boulder. I know environment is extremely important to you. That's something that I prioritize every session, and I pass at least one bill on that priority every year, and this year is no different. I'm working on a big piece of environmental legislation that I look forward to unveiling to you and the rest of the community in the next couple of weeks. I'm working on housing as well. More than 50% of Boulders is renters, and I want to make sure that I'm prioritizing that for you as well, and I work on a piece of legislation on that one. I'm working on a piece of renters protection for those who use vouchers. This bill is still in the works, hasn't been introduced yet, but again, we just started 1 week in. A lot of our bills will be introduced up to actually all throughout session, all the way until the end, 3 days before. I'm working on a booting legislation. Over the last year, a lot of you have reached out to me and told me some of the harassment that you've experienced when it comes to different booting agencies, patrolling neighborhoods, just lying in waiting to boot people's cars. And that's practices that has happened in the towing industry. And now they find a loophole through the booting industry, and we're regulating them. So I look forward to running that bill as well. I'm still working on criminal justice as well. That's one of my priorities. I have a bill on that, but I'm still working through that bill. As of today, I have about 8 pieces of legislation, both from the House and the Senate, that's already been introduced. But again, I still have quite a few that's in the works. Education is also a priority to me because I know it's a priority to you. We want to make sure that we have a working workforce, and education is a big part of that. It's really the foundation of our workforce is education. So we have to stay on top of that. LGBTQ+, again, and reproductive justice. I'm working on a piece of legislation on reproductive justice. It hasn't been introduced yet. We're still working on that. And one thing that I wanted to just share with you, as I was looking at my bills, you may say, okay, Junie's working on so many different things. There's a thread this year. Because of the upcoming administration, I'm doing a lot of work on codifying federal law. Even on my piece of bill that is around renters protection, we also will attempt to codify part of federal housing law as well. I have a bill on a Voters' Rights Act, and you probably already know about it because it's already been introduced in the Senate. And that bill too is codifying federal law. And I'm doing another bill in the election space as well. So I'm just delighted to be here. I want to hear your questions. I may not have all the answers. I just want to bring that up because again, when I first started at the legislature, I had 5 bills. They remain the same. But now a week into session, my list of bills have changed. Some bills I had to drop off after having conversations with community, with different groups of stakeholders. I had to remove that bill from my list. So even what I mentioned to you, it's fluctuating, it's moving. So if I don't have the answer to your question today, I hope that we'll connect after this and then I can look for the answer for you. But I'm really, really grateful to be here, and I want to thank the League of Women's Voter for the opportunity to be here with all of you and also to be in fellowship with my fellow representatives and senators. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Kyle Brown, representative from House District 12. You're in House District 12, so for those of you who are here, great. The rest of you, I'm sure you're nice people too. This is my hometown, and so it's like the rec center I've been going to my entire life, so it's always surreal to do these kinds of events here. I am honored to be returning to the legislature this year, and also this year to have a changing changing roles. I'm taking on a new role as the chair of the Health and Human Services Health and Human Services Committee, excuse me. And also, yeah, I was giving myself a promotion or something. I don't know. Yeah, right. No, yeah, that's not gonna happen. And then also to join the Energy and Environment Committee this year. My priorities this year are going to be related to mental health care. I've got a bill that's been introduced on making sure that we have fair standards for mental health care coverage, and I'm really honored to do that bill with Senator Amabile, our senator here in Louisville. I'm also working on a bill related to insurance companies and their affiliates called pharmacy benefit managers and the practices that they are doing that are raising prescription drug costs and healthcare costs for everybody, trying to rein that in. Obviously, this area has been hit by the Marshall Fire, and that we're no more reminded of that than now, seeing what our neighbors and friends in LA are going through. And this year, I'm going to be tackling the homeowners insurance affordability crisis. I'll be bringing two different bills with colleagues of mine to make sure that we have new programs that will help to mitigate the risk due to hail and wildfire that is putting our homeowners insurance at risk. That's making it unaffordable and unavailable. I'm also honored to do one of those bills with Senator Amabile. I'm still getting used to that. Sorry, Senator.
Me too.
You know, another key point after the pandemic, we have seen changes in our healthcare system, and in particular, our safety net providers, our community health centers, have been particularly strained because the state, per federal law, has been required to disenroll many people who had been relying upon Medicaid for their healthcare coverage. Many more people probably than should have been kicked off, were kicked off, and our safety net providers are hurting because they have been providing care for folks and they're now no longer getting paid to provide that care. So I'm going to be working with my colleagues to make sure that we are doing what we can to protect our safety net. And then finally, I'll be bringing legislation to strengthen services for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. We have particular fees that are placed on telephones, on our telephone lines, very small 3-cent per month fees that fund interpretation services for folks who are deaf and hard of hearing, and we need to strengthen those programs, and I'll be bringing forth legislation on that. I think you can expect in this legislative session that we will have a very intense session on healthcare. Costs of healthcare still continue to skyrocket at unsustainable rates, and we are going to need to continue to work to rein in the excessive costs of hospital and other healthcare. Obviously, as Rep. Joseph mentioned, housing will continue to be a priority of ours. We know the cries that have come from our community and elsewhere about making sure that we have affordable quality housing options. And so we will continue to work on that. And then I'm really proud to be able to work on energy and environment issues. As a former local government elected official, I know the role that local governments can play in making sure that we are meeting our climate, that we are taking climate action, and that we are meeting our climate goals. And I'm going to be working on a bill along with another colleague of mine to establish what I think of is going to be a first in the nation kind of program that will allow local governments to have resources and plan accordingly to really take meaningful climate action. So we'll be working on that. But just really thankful that all of you came to Louisville and happy to have your questions today. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Smith, and I represent HD 49. So the district that Judy just vacated to become senator. She's now my senator. It's really great to be here, and I'm honored to have been elected and to serve all of you in HD 49. I was just thinking back on the first forum I did when I ran for school board in 2005. And it was the League of Women Voter at Boulder Library. And I remember the first question I got was, do you believe in abstinence only sex ed in school districts? And I was like, so excited I got that question because I was like, no. Because St. Vrain at the time had that in their schools, so St. Vrain has changed a lot since then. So, thank you very much to the league for hosting this. So I am a scientist. I was on the school board. I just stepped down from being regent last Tuesday. And the committees that I'm on are ag, water, and natural resources. I was on the Water Resources Advisory Board for the city of Boulder right after the Great Flood and had to deal with all that. And then I'm also on the education committee. So I'm really excited. I got my first top 2 choices as a freshman. So obviously K-12 higher ed is super important to me. Climate change, affordability is an issue that all of us have heard across all of our districts, be it housing, healthcare. So those are all things that I'll be focused on. And the bills that I'm going to be bringing forward are sort of a hodgepodge, but I think it makes sense given my background. But some of them have actually been driven by my constituents because I ran for a year and a half. And so I learned a lot from my constituents, what they're interested in. My first bill is something that I didn't think I would be running, but it's around name, image, and likeness for student athletes. And as a CU regent, I was on the board when the notion of NIL first came on the radar screen, and I've been dealing with it for several years, and we have to change the law just because of the class action lawsuits that have just occurred. I'm also going to be doing something on instant permitting for solar panel installation that should help save money and time for homeowners that are getting solar panels. And I'm going to be working with Rep. Brown on that. I've got a bill on non-functional turf. So something got passed last year about not being able to install non-functional turf at businesses and in medians and cities and so forth. And we're going to be extending that to multifamily homes. Again, water, saving water, right? This came out of Gilpin County. So I've got Western Boulder, Western Larimer, Gilpin, and Clear Creek. So the majority of my geography is actually rural, and my district's large. It's 3,400 square miles. So I will be trying to develop a low-income loan program for low-income people to rebuild their failing septic systems, which is a big issue in rural areas across the state. And being a water person and having taught about, water pollution and so forth, that can be a problem. And then I've got one that I dropped, and I'm going to be picking up, I think, one on e-bikes and regulating throttle e-bikes, which can go up to 29 miles per hour by young people under 16. And everyone I've talked to has been really telling me yes. And I would just like to see hands raised who thinks this would be a good idea. So
Okay.
quite a few, yeah.
Pretty overwhelming.
It's definitely a safety issue, not only for the bike riders, but for the drivers. Certainly in my neighborhood, Casey Middle School is nearby me, and to see these kids just, popping wheelies and 3 people on a bike, no helmets, riding down Balsam where cars are going, to work and so forth. I feel like a bobblehead in making sure that I'm not running someone over. And then I'm gonna be jumping on a bill related to I-70, because obviously I-70 is a big issue through Clear Creek, and that's to regulate the Jake brakes, which are those really noisy and mufflers on the big brakes. So like I said, a mix of bills, some things coming out of sort of my interest, but also of my constituents. So thanks again for being here.
Hello, it's good to see everyone. I see lots of familiar faces. Thank you for having us today. I'm State Senator Janice Marchman. It's my privilege to get to represent my constituency is 176,000 folks, and 25% of them are in Boulder County. So thank you for including me. I'm not a full county of any of, you know, I kind of am with the Larimer County folks as well as the Boulder County folks. And so good to be here today. So I represent Boulder Valley School District as well as St. Vrain Valley School District. And I'm a teacher in Loveland, served on the school board with folks and yeah, in Thompson. And so most of the bills I run are honestly around education. But my biggest interest, this is my third year, starting my third year in the Senate, and as a legislator, my main focus is the budget this year. What happens is we have a set amount of money, and then the governor comes in by law, he has to November 1st and make a request for said money. And then we have to figure out what of those do we like and what of those do we not like. And while I'm not a decision maker in the committee that does that, I definitely have a voice and am going to be honestly in the form of education, quite likely opposing my own party for a number of these things. I think public education is incredibly important. The governor's request includes a lot of things that could be very dangerous, I think, for Colorado in terms of CSI mill levy equalization, almost $60 million that we're gonna put toward that. We're dropping BEST funding, which is what funds all of our capital construction. We're dropping that by 20 million, but we're guaranteeing charter school funding by 11 million. As we're looking at the decisions he's made, he also has decided to get rid of averaging. And in a place of student declining, with declining enrollments, it's going to devastate even Boulder Valley School District. So we can't do that. So that's where I'm saying we're going to have to stand firm, making partners across the aisle to say that's not good enough for our students. So that's my goal. I have a ton of bills. I think I have 16 that have been introduced so far. I kicked it off with one that's called trauma-informed school safety drills. I don't know if any of you have talked to a sweet little kindergartner or first grader recently, but they are doing regular active shooting drills. I tried to get this off the ground last year, and interestingly, the education committee is who opposed it. Got them all lined up over the summer. And so now we should be good to go, but we don't have any money. And so now I'm trying to work with outside organizations to get gifts, grants, and donations to fund this. Because what this is going to do is just going to require, before we have active shooting drills, we're going to notify parents, staff, and students that we're going to be doing this. We're going to be talking about it beforehand. We're going to be training our adults beforehand alone. And then we'll bring the kids in, and afterwards, we're gonna have a little conversation afterwards. So that's what that piece is. Another one I'm really excited about is around childcare. I see a couple of huge childcare advocates in the audience, and I'm really excited to bring forth what I'm bringing forth, which is a cap on application fees. When you're in preschool, it's been a minute since I've done this, but when you're trying to shop around for the right preschool, you have to do applications, and those fees can get quite expensive for our working families. So what this will do is it's going to cap that fee at $25 just to cover the administrative costs. And that'll be for every child care center. So there's a lot of other stuff I'm working on, but I want to hear from you since I don't always get to Boulder County. So I'm going to pass to Senator Amabile, and I look forward to hearing what else is on your mind. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I also want to just say thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and also thank you to the League for being the lead and for doing the incredible great work that you all do in helping us preserve our democracy. And it's really important. And this year, probably more important than it's been, you know, in the last 4 years anyway. 4 years before that, it was really important too. I'm Judy Amabile. I just got elected to the state Senate. I have previously served 4 years in the state house in District 49, and I feel like I'm just leaving House District 49 in great shoes. And people say, oh, those are big shoes to fill, but actually Leslie's got bigger shoes than I do. No problem for her. And I was also elected to the Joint Budget Committee by my caucus. And so I'm serving on the Joint Budget Committee this year, and also will be the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. And I would say that the theme for this year, just to echo Senator Marchman, is the budget. And I do have a vote on that committee, and it is going to be incredibly hard. We have to cut, well, sometimes it's $1 billion, then sometimes it's more than $1 billion, and then, oh, we got a better forecast, and now it's down to 600 million, except for we didn't count the 350 million that we promised law enforcement on the ballot. And so when we add that back in, we're back up to $1 billion. And these are going to be very hard choices. And I will say no one that I have heard on the Joint Budget Committee wants to cut K through 12 education. And the governor has given us his budget proposal, but just to be extremely clear, it is not up to the governor. It is up to the legislature to set the budget. So the Joint Budget Committee will be working hard with the governor, but also with our caucus to make sure that our values are expressed in this budget, because that is really, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we say what we actually care about. But at the end of the day, we are going to have to make really hard choices. And one of the things that I care a lot about is the safety net. And Medicaid is the second biggest part of our budget, or maybe the first biggest part of our budget, and K through 12 education is after that. So we have to be very careful what happens with Medicaid. And I do not want to sacrifice the people in our state who can least afford to take care of themselves. And so that is what I will be really focused on. One of the other big areas in our budget is the Department of Corrections, which last year topped $1 billion. And I think we are not being innovative in the way we are handling our criminal justice system. Everybody wants public safety, but I think we have a lot of disagreements about what are the best ways to make our community safe. And I personally don't think that really extremely long prison sentences make anybody safer, but they are very costly. And there's no evidence that suggests that that reduces crime. So I want us to really take a hard look at this year's Department of Corrections budget ask and make sure that we infuse that. Like, I'm going to be running a Joint Budget Committee bill that says, before we fund more beds, let's take a look at how can we move more people from prison into parole and probation and into community corrections, which are better places for people to be. And the other thing is we have hundreds of people who actually qualify for compassionate release. That means that they have Alzheimer's, or they're in a wheelchair, or they've gone blind and deaf, and they are not going to reoffend, but they're stuck in DOC because we have no place else to send them. So I'm going to be working, that is going to be part of this bill that I'm running that I hope the Joint Budget Committee will get behind. Then I'll just say the other thing that I think you all know about me is that I'm really concerned about mental health care and about the intersection of criminal justice and mental health. And so I was on 2 interim committees, chair of one and vice chair of the other. And there are 8 bills coming out of those committees, and I'll be a prime sponsor on 7 of those bills. And they're just starting to be introduced, and they are things to do with jails and things to do with how can we deflect our children from the criminal justice system and instead get them into an appropriate care setting. So for kids who are committing, relatively low-level crimes, are there other solutions that don't involve running them through the criminal justice system? And I have two bills that deal with that topic. And then also what happens to people when they're in crisis, and how can we get more people into care, even if they don't know they need help? And that also, you know, has to do with our homeless population. So those are kind of the highlights for me.
Thank you. Okay. I meant earlier to acknowledge a few of our elected officials that have joined us as audience members today. We have Kathy Gephardt here today from the State Board of Ed. And from the Louisville City Council, we have Josh Cooperman and Deb Fahey. So, all right. We had a number of questions submitted dealing with urban wildfires and preventing fires in residential homes and neighborhoods, and the effects of climate change, prevention and resilience that might be able to be worked on with the state legislature. Obviously, with the tragedy that's happening in California right now, this is really on everybody's minds. And I know even on the anniversary of the Marshall Fire, we had a very windy day and we had a very dry December, and I was nervous too. So, and this isn't for anyone specifically. So, whoever wants to address, you know, and there are other plans along the lines.
Well, I'll just start, and then I know other people have. Yeah, it's
I think you just have to put it really,
okay.
there you go.
I know other people have legislation that they're working on, so, Rev Brown mentioned one of the wildfire resilient, insurance bills, and I'm also gonna be, working on that with him. And, yes, we need to do more to address what's happening, and then we need to have, we need to be addressing climate change, but of course, here in Colorado, we can't solve that on our own. But we can be leaders, and I think we have done a really good job of that. And as witnessed by all of the people at this table who have worked on this issue and will continue to work on this issue. And so, and I'll just say too, that we all work together and we support each other, and we do these things together. We don't always agree on every bill, but for the most part, we are working together. And this is one of the biggest areas that we are all focused on, especially on the Democrat side.
Awesome. And I would say this is actually, I'm in the most targeted district in terms of needing to be right on the line with things. And this is a very, very good area for nonpartisan collaboration. I'm on the Wildfire Matters Review Committee as a part of one of my committees. And so they've got, I think, 10 interim bills coming out. And I think same thing, I'm sponsor on like 8 of them, but a couple that and then I'm also running an additional one. There are a couple of them that may not make it through because of money, but AI trying to get in on trying to figure out how to find these fires before they happen. There's so much technology out there. The problem is it's quite expensive. So this is kind of a public-private partnership to try to invest more in that. Another one is a forestry workforce bill. Unfortunately, a lot of our workforce bills this year are going to get canned because we don't have money for them, but the intention is still there. So we're going to see when we take away all the money, if anything's left, and if it's just a mandate, we're gonna can the thing. And if it's actually something we can do to take a step without money, we're gonna move forward on that, which I'm really excited about. And then there's another one that's called, we combined a couple of bills. Mine was called the Certified Burner Bill, and then we combined it with another one, and it's called Increasing Prescribed Burns. Those are actually really good for our WUIs. And so what this will do is allow some reciprocity so that we can have more people able to do certified burns. This bill was brought by the Nature Conservancy because it's a priority again on all sides. Finally, I'll just say like one other bill I'm running, as you're thinking about the first responders out in California, the amount of smoke inhalation, heat, and just things that are on fire there, the air quality is so very bad. Our firefighters are subjected to a lot of toxins that can cause circulatory issues as well as cancer. So last year we passed an issue, since we have so many wildfires, sadly, we passed a bill, the speaker ran this to include part-time firefighters and volunteer firefighters and those extra health benefits, which makes perfect sense. One thing they missed is in Colorado, our sheriff's departments also have to hire firefighters, and those firefighters are not currently included. So in Boulder County, it's 16. I'm working with your Sheriff Johnson on that. And in Larimer County, it's 12. So that's a personal bill that I'm running. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm gonna pass. I'm sorry I talked so much, but I just wanted you to know some of the bills that were coming out of that particular wildfire committee.
I'll just say, I've been in the pre-evac zone 3 times, and the neighborhood that I grew up in California was immediately evacuated yesterday. So this has been a huge impact in my life forever. And I don't have any bills, but since I am on the Ag, Water, and Natural Resources, I think quite a few of the bills might come through my committee. And I did see one that has to do with vegetation. I haven't read it yet. That's going to be coming through our committee. One thing, you know, I don't even know how Los Angeles is going to rebuild, because it took so long and still taking a long time in Louisville to rebuild. But I think more can be done with building codes, but that's very much a local control sort of thing. Fencing, windows, you know, your vents up on your roof, do you have some sort of protection around that? But again, having been on school board, we hold local control very tightly, and I know so do city councils and commissioners and so forth. So I don't see the state doing any sort of building codes necessarily, but certainly locally, there can be a lot can be done with building codes.
Thanks. I'll just say that for my part, you know, we've done a lot of work in Louisville and in Superior on recovery from the Marshall Fire. I think that we now have, as difficult as that process has been, I hold up our community as a model, quite frankly, for the country in terms of what you can do to really make things as good as possible for people, right? Incredibly painful, incredible amounts of suffering that went on, but we have done it about as well as just about anybody. And so I'm hopeful that our community, and I know members of our community are already reaching out to folks in Los Angeles, just like they reached out to folks in Lahaina in order to help them recover. A lot of what needs to go on post-disaster is consumer protection. It's holding insurance companies accountable. It's holding mortgage companies accountable. And then it's thinking about how do we reduce the risk of our communities, whether it's from fire, by, you know, encouraging fire-resistant materials, or it's making it lower cost to put on things like you know, a fireproof fence, or even a hail-resistant roof, because from an insurance perspective, hail is as big a problem as wildfire. So those are the kinds of things that I'll continue to work on. That's the crux of the bill that I'll be carrying this year, and I just will, you know, I think it's something that we're not going to get away from anytime soon.
Thank you. This is a very, very difficult conversation too. As I was watching what's been going on in California, And I know a couple of days, couple of nights actually here, we had really, really extreme winds. So I do work in the environment space, but the winds are really, really high. And I don't know if the work that I'm doing in the environmental space will temper down that wind. So again, we have to go into the mitigation space. And last year, when I first got into the legislature, I did pass 2 bills in that space to help with fire-resistant homes. One of them is a grant program, and this year, I don't have any bills yet. I'm still working on that to see whether I will be able to introduce something in that space. But I just want to make the commitment to you that I will be supporting all the bills that you've heard mentioned from my other colleagues, whether it's Rep. Brown's bill in the insurance space, and also my good Senator Marchman or Senator Armable's as well bills, because at the end of the day, we live here in community in the Front Range as well. We are in danger when it comes to those winds. And another part of the conversation too, I had a coffee in community, and one of the questions that was put to me was, what is the evacuation, the state plan when it comes to evacuation? Because these disasters, frankly, I don't know if we can stop them, but is the work that we put in place and the mitigation that we put in place. So I did commit to that community member that I will reach out to the governor's office to find out more, some of the work that we're doing in that space, and to let some of our community members know what are we doing in that front. And also, again, working closely with the city councils as well, because they are on the ground. The council, most of them, if not all of them, actually, they are the one who manages the police departments. What is the emergency preparedness they have when it comes to that front? That's very, very important. Again, I have California in mind as we're having this conversation, and I make this commitment to you. I will be supporting these bills. It's unfortunate we don't have a lot of money, but I will do whatever I can to support my colleagues in moving these policies forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to another topic, which I had a number of questions. First, relating to the rights of immigrants in our state, in our county. And I don't know if there's action at the state level or at least advice you even have for us. And I know we have many of our local nonprofit groups who are very interested in this. Comment on that. And then also tangent, for people who are here as migrants, any work being done to help with expediting work permits and so forth, so that they can get out of less than ideal situations faster by getting employed.
Thank you for that question. And I welcome it and I appreciate it. Again, I'm trying to express how I feel, because immigrants in our community has been so vilified over the last few months. Just to hear your concern really, really touched my heart. So thank you for that. We have an immigrant caucus or an immigration caucus. All our colleagues at this table are part of this conversation. Again, we know there's a new administration coming, and I don't want to say they are, how do I put it? I don't want to say they're anti-immigrants, but the rhetorics are definitely anti-immigrants. And so we have to find ways to ensure we're not a border state. So we can't control what's going on at the border. But the commitment that I make to the community is that if somebody's here in Colorado, my job is to protect every Coloradans, everyone who lives in a House District 10, and those who come to visit in that House District 10. And I know that some of these immigrants are your family members, and that's my job. I do have a couple of bills that I am looking at in the immigration front. One of them has already been drafted, and the immigration caucus that we have at the state legislature has been having those conversations. And also we're looking at various protections that we can pass through the legislature in order to protect our immigrant community. So I'll pass it to Rep. Brown if he has any more to add in this front. Thank you.
No, thank you. I just want to say that, like, we are having intensive discussions, as Rep. Joseph mentioned, about how we protect Coloradans from overreaches by the federal government. We have existing laws on books in Colorado that do not allow local law enforcement agencies to collaborate with federal ICE. They don't check people's papers when they get picked up on various, minor crimes. And we will continue to have those protections in place, but I know that there's work going on at the Capitol right now to try to figure out if there are additional protections that we need to put in place that will help to safeguard Colorado. So I'll be participating in those conversations and share everyone's concerns about that.
And I'll just add, we're all very much concerned, and that's been a question right off the bat from a lot of people. But the Attorney General's office is also looking into where the state can strengthen laws to protect immigrants. And not only do we have the caucus on immigration, but we also have something on energy and reproductive rights, because those are the three areas that we're really concerned that the new administration might try to attack some of our laws. And as we're seeing, a lot of things are starting to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court might turn it over. So we are all very cognizant of it. We're worried about it, and we're, scrambling to do whatever we can to strengthen up our laws.
Just two things. I want to highlight that we are working to make sure that our schools will remain ICE-free. So I want you to know that. The other piece that I'll just add, having served on the Ag and Natural Resource Committee for a while too, is 70% of our farm labor are on visas legally now. And so it's going to be very important that we make sure that those continue to be legal ways to work in Colorado. So I'll just leave that.
Okay, thanks. So I'll just talk a little bit about this from the budget perspective. So a couple of years ago, we passed a bill that said pregnant women and children who are undocumented can qualify for Medicaid. And the bill had, I think, a relatively low fiscal impact at the time that it got passed. But it is about to become the law in January. And in the meantime, people who have been showing up in emergency rooms have been told, please sign up for these Medicaid benefits. And so that number of people who we were expecting to cover has exploded. And now that looks to have a much, much bigger fiscal impact. So there is a debate happening right now in the Joint Budget Committee about whether we fund this legislation that got passed 2 years ago. And there's a push to not fund that. And to say, nope, you don't qualify for Medicaid if you're pregnant or you just had a baby and your children don't qualify. And I will tell you that I will not be supporting that. I want us to implement that bill fully for two reasons. One is that people are people, and we need to care for people if they're here in our state. And if they need medical care, they should have medical care. The other reason is that if somebody shows up at an emergency room, that care is a lot more expensive than if they were to receive care ahead of time. And so we're really actually going to cost our state more money by doing that. And unless we say, if you're undocumented, we're going to just let you die on the street. And that is not a place I want to live. So I want you all to know that this is a battle that we are about to have. And probably would be helpful to have people support. And you asked us to talk about nonprofits. This is one of the areas where the nonprofits can rally support for things like this, because there'll be a bunch of stuff that comes up. And we're going to need your help to make sure that we are doing the right thing. I think Celeste has a question.
Sorry, we don't have the equipment to pass around, but you can write one down on an index card and submit it. Thanks. Shifting gears, these two questions are somewhat related. Our local airports, Rocky Mountain Airport, and I did not hear this mentioned in opening priority statements. Any continuing work on addressing noise pollution, on the increased air traffic, and related to that, anything, I'm working on stopping leaded fuel in airplanes, anything to support that switch away. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a really important question for our community. You know, we are badgered, I guess, for lack of better words, by the airport in Jefferson County. We are continually dealing with, especially if you live in Superior, but in Louisville and in Lafayette as well, folks are constantly dealing with the noise from these airplanes that take off and land at 5 in the morning, sometimes 2 in the morning. If, you know, so we are also dealing with the increasing evidence that living closer to a general aviation airport like RMMA, it makes it more likely for people to have elevated levels of lead in their blood. So last year, with the support of folks up here, we passed a very important piece of legislation which says that if you are an airport in a suburban area like ours and you're receiving state dollars, you have to do certain basic things to work with your community. You have to be working to transition away from leaded fuel in your small planes. You have to be developing a noise abatement plan with the community. And importantly, we now have 2 community seats. For the first time in the history of Colorado, we have 2 community seats, and both of them on the state aviation board, and both of them live here in southeastern Boulder County. Both of the people who were appointed. I know that for a lot of folks, the bill that we passed sounds like we did not go far enough. And I would agree with you. And yet, across the nation, this bill was one of the first of its kind. It is the first time that a state has ever said, we're not just going to give money out to aviation. We're going to make sure that our airports are being good neighbors. And we will continue to need to do that. Over the last year, I've worked with my colleagues and with others in the community to try to find new ways to address these issues. It's a very complicated issue for a state or a local government to take on because the federal government basically legally prevents us from taking any significant action. So we have authority over the kinds of how we spend our money, and that's about it. We at the state level can't tell planes where to go. We can't even tell them not to fly or when to fly or whatever. But we can say that if you're spending money, we're gonna only spend money in ways that are gonna be benefiting our residents. So I will continue to work on ways to mitigate the noise and the pollution. In particular, I think the flight schools who fly these little prop planes, which take off and go low speeds and are very loud over your neighborhoods. We need to find ways to incentivize those things to be somewhere besides our community, right? And so while I haven't figured out how to do that yet, that's basically my next story. I will not have something to bring this session, but over the next year, I anticipate working with all of you to bring in additional legislation. So thanks for the question.
I just wanted to add to the comment about the leaded fuel. Last year, we passed House Bill 1272, which had some funding in it for sustainable aviation fuel. So again, now we don't have as much money, but again, that's part of the work. Hopefully next session or the upcoming sessions will have more funding to provide more incentives so that we can move away from petroleum-based fuel. Thank you.
Okay.
With that one. Thank you. We've talked about some in opening comments, but we had a couple of questions, so I wanted to give a little more time to it. On the early childhood, special districts in Colorado or, early childhood care. And that, I think, right, the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, is frozen currently in Boulder County, the subsidy. Would you like to speak more to what can be done this session for the early childhood care?
I can,
If you want to talk about that, I'll go after you.
okay, you talk the money.
So yeah, there's an intersection between CCAP, which is the early, childhood, preschool, or not preschool, well, it's a subsidies for childcare. And there's UPK, which is universal pre-K, which is just for 4-year-olds. And what happened with UPK is that we passed a ballot measure that said we were going to provide up to 10 hours a week. But when we implemented that, we provided 15 hours a week. So now the counties are asking us to look at that and to say, could we dial that back to 10 and then put the money into this subsidized childcare that's for all ages? And that's also meeting with some resistance. But that's something that doesn't strike me as a horrible, terrible idea. UPK provides this 15 hours of preschool for everyone. And I have heard from families who are telling me, we don't need that help. We could afford it ourselves. And we would rather the state spend the money to help the people who are under-resourced for childcare. So it's complicated, and they are two separate programs, so we can't just move money from one to the other, but there are some things that we can do. And again, nobody wants to cut the CCAP programs, but they are already, as she said, on freeze, and some places have wait lists. Some places are just freezing and some places are doing wait lists. But I don't think there's any place that just feels like they've got plenty of money.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing I would just add is the federal government has put in place some best practices that if there were money trees for all of our states, we'd be able to do these things. But they have mandated those things. And so it's going to be very hard for our state to do some of those things. So that's going to mean that we're going to be able to take less students, and it's going to cost more. And so we have to get creative about trying to figure out what to do with UPK and that kind of stuff. I will say too, UPK was one of those things that in the education community, we're concerned that it could end up to be the next BS factor. If you talk to the Boulder Valley School District and St. Vrain Valley School District, they're quite concerned about the money that's going to be required. This was stood up by ARPA dollars, and now we're trying to provide general funding to provide for 3 and 4-year-olds. It was a big thing, if you'll recall, that the governor ran on. And so now implementing it with fidelity, with actual dollars rather than ARPA funds is quite challenging. And so I will say both the governor and the president of the Senate talked about this education desert. And what that is, you can certainly include childcare. It's also higher ed kind of stuff. And this is a big issue. It's a big problem. It's something we're gonna have to keep working out. But until we grow the pie for this education desert, we're just going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're gonna take public monies to help private folks, or we're going to take money from big, cost of living, like in Boulder County, and we're gonna give it to our rural schools, and we're just gonna at some point have to grow the pie. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but at some point, we're going to need a sustainable funding source for all levels of education to include childcare, K-12, and higher ed.
I'm just gonna say to do that, we need to get rid of Tabor.
I won't speak for my colleagues, you might get your wish. I just wanted to add that early childhood education is a priority for me as well. When it comes to the early childhood districts, it feels complicated, and I had conversation with Casey to see how we could potentially change the process, because again, how is county commissioners working with a lot of the advocates that works in this field? That's part of the challenge, especially when you're looking at the special district management plans. And I was looking into a potential bill to see whether we could change how the process goes, because ultimately, yes, we need more money in the budget, but more money in the budget itself, knowing the many priorities that we have, the state in itself, it's unlikely that we will be able to just fund early childhood education. But if we can maybe change the district process so that the counties can go to the voters much easier and get the funding that they need, that would help us a lot more than just waiting on the state to fund education, early childhood education, when we know there's a lot of things that the state in itself is unable to fund. So again, I am hopeful. I am still thinking through this process on how I can better support the early childhood districts. And again, it's a priority of mine because we know Boulder is extremely expensive. A lot of young people can't live here. And then even from the last census, we lost about 3,000 people in Boulder. So at the end of the day, we want young people to live here, but we have to make it accessible and possible. And that means people need access to childcare. And I want to continue to work with Casey and all the other stakeholders who are working in the early childhood space, because again, there has to be more coordination when it comes to funding. The state is unable to fund early childhood education all on its own. So therefore, as a state, we have to make it possible for counties to bring forward these ballot measures in order for us as a community to prioritize education, early childhood education. And I know we will. I know you want early childhood education for your kids and your grandkids. So again, it's just the process is too wonky and too convoluted, and we need to make that process easier for community members who are working in this space. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to HOAs, homeowner organizations. The question is dealing with, will there be any new legislation? And I know as someone who lives in an HOA, kind of keeping an eye on things, we've had some recent legislation passed for more oversight. Is there anything more happening along that front? The question here says that in August, some protection for the homeowners was reversed. I'm not sure. I know about that. And full disclosure, as someone who's married to someone who's on an HOA board and very frustrated by some of the oversight and trying to work with property management companies to get things done, I know it's a tough area. We love living in dense housing. We think it's efficient. It's the right amount of space for us. We don't want a large single family home. It's affordable housing in many cases, but it is a tough area. Anything new along those lines this session?
Thank you for that question. I wanted to do work in HOA since I got to the legislature, and because I had so many different priorities, I was not able to work on any HOA bills. But this year I'm working on an ADR bill, which is the alternate dispute resolution for mandatory mediation in the HOA space. I'd be happy to tell you more about it. It's a new bill. It hasn't been introduced, but again, part of the conversation is that I don't want to vilify HOAs because it's an important system and process, but there are community members who feel that there's a power imbalance when it comes to HOAs. So how do we alleviate that power imbalance and also ensure that there is alternate dispute resolution instead of going straight to the courts, because we know sometimes the HOA may have more money and they have more power to litigate, and the community member, again, as one person, against the system, it's much more difficult. So again, this bill will ensure that there is alternate dispute resolution, and hopefully things are resolved before we get to the court system. Again, support management resolution as well too. So I'm excited to be working on this bill, and would love to hear from any of you if you have any feedback on how to navigate some of these processes as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have one thing to add. I know there is another bill coming, which is about what happens to people who get foreclosed on by their HOA. So people are literally losing their homes to their homeowners association. And even when they sell the home, the person isn't being fairly compensated. So I know that that is another bill that's coming. And I'll say I have a disabled son, and my ex-husband and I own a condo that he lives in, and my ex-husband's on the board. So I'm also related, somewhat loosely, to somebody who's on an HOA board. And it is actually really important for people to sign up and be on these boards, because that will affect what happens. And of course, the other thing is that a lot of boards hand over power to these management companies, and they aren't always good actors either. So we've had some problems with the management company that we hired. So, but this is a big topic, and I'm so glad to hear that Rep. Joseph is bringing the bill she's bringing, and I believe Rep. Ricks is bringing the foreclosure bill.
Okay, shifting to transportation, is there anything being done to help the transportation for the handicapped out of Lafayette, Erie, Superior going into Boulder, especially to the campus? That improvements could be made, it sounds like, from this person.
I'll take this, but it's only because I looked at all of the introduced bills. I know I need to get a life. And one of them is about,
Like it's your job.
it's like it's my job. But I looked at them all yesterday, and one is around paratransit and I believe it's another cycle workforce, but I hope you guys realize when we do these work groups, this is the iterative process of legislation. We study it, so then we have the data to prove we need to go take that next step. And I could be mistaken, but if I'm not mistaken, I do believe this is a study group to try to help folks figure out how we can do more paratransit, because there's is it Title VII? It's a federal requirement too. I mean, we're out of statute, right? Or out of, what's it called? Compliance. Thank you. So but I do know that bill is coming. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add about it.
Well, I just say RTD, there will be another bill. Last year, there was a big bill about RTD and changing the governance and all kinds of stuff, and it went down in a ball of flames. And, well, that's how it felt, I think.
It's true. It did.
Bill with that.
But this year they're bringing it back. It'll be a scaled down version. RTD has just elected a bunch of new board members, so I think they will have a different approach and a more consumer friendly approach. And I'll also say, this is something I really care about, because again, my disabled son is a bus rider. And if RTD can't get him where he needs to go, he can't go.
I attended the Community Solutions program on the Boulder campus last week, and it's the woman who brought that up? Yes, Angela. So Angela brought that up, and we have the director of RTD, and they're really doing a lot of work, it sounds like, to be more customer friendly, for lack of a better word. And so she heard those concerns, and I don't know if she talked to you afterwards, but changes need to be done. I'm hoping myself to be commuting by bus to the Capitol fairly regularly to help the environment. But keep bringing it up, because it is an issue for sure. And I know a lot of people, CU is there's a lot of things going on, lectures and concerts and so forth, and we want the seniors to be able to come to campus and go to those.
For my part, I'll just say that, I think that the chair of the board of directors of RTD is tired of seeing me, because every time I see her, I talk to her about a service in this area, and how, especially since the pandemic, has really declined. We used to have a bus that picked up right here at the Caslin that would take you all the way down to Civic Center, that you could walk up to the Capitol or whatever. That bus ended during the pandemic and has never come back. I also represent Lafayette. Lafayette's level of service is severely diminished since the pandemic. So, you know, I am in this to make sure that our service levels increase. And I think that's incredibly important for folks with disabilities, because, you know, to Senator Amabole's point, this is, public transit is how folks with disabilities get around a lot. So I think that's something we need to continue to prioritize. Someday we will get our train here in Boulder County, and I will continue to fight. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is dealing with the senior homestead tax exemption. And I can't say I'm 100% sure this is not portable if you sell a property.
It is now.
It is now. Okay, so we answered that one very
But
quick.
it might not be
Boulder County
forever.
says no.
Boulder County says no?
Boulder County said no. I have to talk to somebody on the phone. They said no.
We'll get you the straight answer.
So by law, in January, Assessor Braddock is supposed to have processes in place. This came up in my town hall in Larimer County yesterday, and our Larimer County assessor does have those processes in place. What it is if you are already eligible for your homestead, your senior homestead, you can make it portable, but it's only for 2 years. And it'll be for the first $100,000 worth of your house. But this is a problem if that's in fact what you're finding. So, we'll reach out to Assessor Braddock, but the law, you know, that's the intention is that you should be able to do that starting January 25, and that goes until January 27. So that is the way it was supposed to be.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, the colleague rep leader who ran this bill last year or this year, she's bringing it back, to make it permanent. So just wanted to bring that up. And of course, it's gonna be a challenge because of money, but hopefully, we can get it through the finish line with the support of Senator Amabile and Senator Marchman as well too.
Well, we'll
wait,
take that.
I can affirm.
Well, I'll just say I haven't found the tree yet, but it is a wonderful, wonderful thing. We do wish we could keep it. It is $49 million a year to keep it going. So we're really lucky to have it for a couple of years.
So this is super wonky and I won't stay on it for too long, but so we have Tabor. And every year the Tabor cap is set, and it's a formulaic thing around how much our population has grown and what is inflation. And that's part of why we're in this budget disaster that we're in, is because inflation has slowed, which is good, but it also has an impact on the Tabor cap. So so anything that we collect that is above this Tabor cap, we have to refund to the taxpayers. And one of the ways that we refund this money is through tax credits. So the senior homestead exemption is one of the ways that we can legitimately refund the money, the earned income tax credit, the child tax credit. Well, so last year we went crazy and we passed a lot of tax credits. And next year, we might not hit the Tabor cap. And then all of those tax credits will come out of the general fund. And that's not going to be okay. That's going to cause us to have an even bigger budget deficit. So some of the tax credits came with a provision that said if there's not a Tabor refund, then the tax credit doesn't apply. But they didn't all do that. And so we have to be really careful this year about passing new tax credits that will then cut into the Tabor into the general fund next year.
Okay.
Sorry.
A question about uninsured motorists. Somebody's insurance agent has told them that Colorado has one of the highest rates of that in the US, which is costly to all of us. Is this at all on the awareness of the state legislature and any proposed remedies?
Thank you very much for this question. It's a very challenging question. It is absolutely true that Colorado has one of the highest rates of uninsured motorists in the country. It's about 15%, even though it is the law to carry auto insurance. I've done work in health insurance and I've been doing work in homeowners insurance. So I figure at some point I'm going to do work in auto insurance. But this is a huge problem.
Insurance guy.
I just do insurance. basically.
State Farm.
That's exactly, no. But I think this is a huge issue and it does increase people's costs, right? You're required, you feel you need to carry pretty significant uninsured motorist protections because you know that there's a pretty good chance that if somebody hits you, they're gonna be uninsured. And that creates a ridiculous amount of cost. So we're having affordability issues in auto insurance that's due to hail as much as it's due to anything else, but the uninsured motorist part is a huge part of that. So, you know, I don't have a solution for that, but I hear you, and I think that in the future, maybe in a future session, I would love to be able to bring something forward that would help to increase rates of insurance and help to reduce the overall affordability burden on folks in the auto insurance realm.
Okay, I know last year was a big year for land, housing combined with transit, land use reform and working with local municipalities and so forth. And this person wants to encourage you all to keep working on land use reform with a few specifics. Reforming the builder defects rule to encourage condo development. And the single-use staircase in buildings to be allowed similar to the rest of the world. I just saw a YouTube on that the other day, so it's a topic. And encouraging zoning reform to promote affordability, walkability, and small business growth. Anything in the works there?
I think all of the above. I've heard, I don't want to let any cats out of the bag, but yes, all of those are moving forward. I think Annie Basenecker is running the single stairwell. And I forget the rest of them too.
Yeah, the single stairwell bill, the governor mentioned that in his speech. That's happening. That'll be introduced. There's a bill about mobile homes, making it easier to build manufactured housing and get that permitted and sent out to sites so people can live in it. And then the construction defects law, last year there were two bills and they were really kind of polar opposites. And they both went down in a ball of flames. And there were lots of balls of flames last year, but this year there will be a new construction defects bill. And I'll tell you that it's very contentious because some people think that we're going to then unleash a bunch of housing that isn't well built and that the builders won't be held accountable. And of course, some people think that the way it's working right now is really hamstringing building of particularly condos, which are entry-level home ownership opportunities. But since I have the mic, I'm going to talk about one bill that I'm working on, which is about tapping into some buckets of money that the state has, and not to take the money, but to invest the money a little bit differently, and to invest that money in housing, in affordable housing for middle income home ownership. And so that bill hasn't been introduced yet, but we are working on that. And hopefully one of the big targets for this affordable home ownership will be teachers.
I'll just say that's where our local control stuff comes in. The mobile home, I think so far, at least the ones that I've seen so far, the mobile home park zoning bill is gonna be the one that's gonna tap into that local control issue. Because if you look at zoning, it is the reason why affordable housing is not existent in a lot of places. And it is also the mechanism by which communities get to control their communities. So I read a great book this summer called Arbitrary Lines. It's all about zoning and what it's good for and what it kind of harms, and as we see it happen. So all of that to say, that is, I think, the only local control, because yes, local control is very important to my district. And so I wasn't able to support each and every one of those bills that came through because of local control, but I voted against, the ADU bill, so. I forgive you, Kathy.
And I'll just say, I'm actually sort of proud of CU. I feel like it's will be the poster child or a poster child for the bill that passed last year to build more densely along transportation corridors. I'm sure everyone in Louisville is aware, but beyond, Louisville, the university bought the Cinnabar property at McCaslin and 36. And the university will be building housing targeted mainly at faculty and potentially graduate students. We've been having a hard time hiring and retaining faculty because housing is so expensive here. And obviously the bus line's right there. If you're a CU student or a professor or staff member, you get a free bus pass. The bike path is right there. Plenty of electric bikes and so forth, and you know, just athletic people that come here. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out.
Great, a little bit of a shift here to our younger generation. I know the Boulder County League, we worked hard these last couple of years on energizing young voters and trying to get them more involved. What are any of you doing to reach out to your youngest constituents and voters, letting them know that they have a say, and also making sure that they have some political power in the room also?
TikTok, that's all.
Um,
I mean, I think
Go away.
yeah, exactly. It's about to go away, right? Yeah. I think that, you know, we all have an obligation to serve all of our district, right? And that, you know, it has been a rule as long as I've known and been around in politics that folks, as they age, as they get to be older, they tend to be more involved, right? They're more established in a particular area. They have kids. And so, you know, I'll continue to try to connect with folks in whatever way that they want to connect, right? I joke about TikTok, but you know, using social media as a platform is an important way of connecting with folks. And I will meet anybody for coffee. Anybody who ever goes to Paul's Coffee over here in Louisville knows that I'm usually there. And so just I think that's important because I want to make sure that I'm representing all of the constituents that I serve.
Thank you. So I'm honored to get to serve as the chair of the Colorado Youth Advisory Commission. And what that is 40 youth that there's one for each Senate district and then 5 that represent particular populations of kiddos, LGBT, disabled, that kind of thing, rural. And so these kids work all year to try to come up with great ideas, and they bring us some pretty spicy things, and I've run their bells. But they brought us some pretty tame ones this year, and one of them is about access to the Environmental Justice Board. I don't know if you realize, but our students are having an existential crisis around our climate. And not all of us get it, and some of us do, but they are really having this. So a number of my bills and a number of the efforts we're trying to make are around the environmental impacts, and they want to have a say. So anyway, at the end of all this, they get to bring forth bills to bring forth to the legislature. And we brought through 3 this year. The Legislative Council killed one of them. It was about health literacy in schools. It's something the kids wanted to know. What does it mean, urgent care versus emergency room? And how do I read my prescriptions and all that kind of stuff? That one was killed, so that one's not moving forward, but the other two are moving forward. So it's just a real joy to get to work with the kids. And then I will say also as a teacher, as a middle school teacher, they really keep me humble. Not quite as humble as my Senate colleagues keep me, but the students keep me humble and they keep me laughing. And so any opportunity I have to be with the kids, that's where you'll find me.
I'm on Ledge Council, and I'll just say that I voted yes on that bill. I see that we have a couple of young people here today, but, well, I see two.
Yeah.
But not that you all aren't young. And I'm young too, in that calculation. But, you know, I ran a campaign this last, election, and I hired a lot of young people. And the amount of energy and enthusiasm that they had, so they all worked on my primary campaign, and I made sure that I paid everybody for the work that they did. And we started out paying them $15 an hour. And I was like, you know, we need more, we need them to work more. And my campaign manager said, well, you're gonna have to pay them more. So for the last 2 weeks of the campaign, we paid everybody $30 an hour.
Wow.
And they did step up and they knocked on a bunch of doors. We all knocked on a bunch of doors. And that was a great opportunity for them. And they all went on then to work in general election campaigns. So, and some of them are now working for Michael Bennett and Joe Neguse, and some of them are ledge aides. And so I think that's part of our obligation as legislators, is to try to engage on a one-on-one basis with people and to give them opportunities. So I have an intern that's starting, and I'm sure everybody has interns that they've hired. And I go to schools if I'm invited, and I have been invited to go to, I've been to Boulder High to talk to students. And this year I went to 2 elementary schools, and these kids had the best questions, and they were so excited to get to ask their questions. And so I think, and I know a lot of my colleagues also do that, and I think that is a way that we can inspire young people to get involved. And thank you to the 2 young people that are here today, looking at you and you.
Thank you. I really appreciate this question. Back in 2019, I ran for city council and I won, and I believe I won because of the young people. In my district, we have CU Boulder. And to me, engaging young people is extremely important to me. It's important to me because I felt that I wouldn't have been elected had it not been for them. And also working on issues that young people care about. In my first year, I worked on gun violence prevention, and I will be working on gun violence prevention again this year. And it's because of them. That's very, very important to young people. Also LGBTQ plus rights issues. That's very, very important to our youth. And I want to make sure that I work on that as well. And reproductive justice also is something that is very important to young people in the Voting Rights Act. So all these are things that I will be working on and that I have been working on. And similar to Senator Amabile, I have worked with, throughout my tenure as a public servant, I have worked with youth and I will continue to do so. It just brings me joy. And I just wanted to note something that happened recently. And that's why I was pointing to Senator Marchman, because I had a couple of young people who reached out to me from the local high school, and they wanted to add environment to our piece of legislation that we're working on together. And I reached out to Senator Marchman, and true to her values, she talked to these young people and added the issue that they brought forward into the bill. Again, there is a space for you to be engaged and to contribute. And Senator Marchman is willing and open, and all of us here at this table is open to hear your feedback. I do believe the future belongs to you, not to me. I think it's yours, and please reach out and engage us because we're willing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I advertised a 4 o'clock ending, and I'm going to adhere to that. I'm sure you all have other things to do today, even though the Broncos lost. But I have some family members who are Bills fans, so they will surely let me know that they're doing great. So thank you all for coming today. As constituents, you have a right, even an imperative, to make your opinions known to the individuals that we elect. Accountability and representation are essential to democracy. Thanks again to the Louisville Senior and Rec Center for hosting us, my fellow league members for helping us out. This is a team effort. And also to our senators and representatives for joining us here today. And thank you for running for public office to begin with. So if you appreciate events like this, or the election season work that we do, please consider making a donation to the League of Women Voters in Boulder County. There's a QR code there on the slide, and I also want to remind you, you can go to our website to find the contact information for any of these folks. I will type up the questions that we did not get to and email them to all of you, and I should really type up all the questions because some of our senators and reps couldn't make it. Just so that you at least know what topics people are interested in. I think it's very important. So thank you all for coming out and have a great rest of your day.